What's up, Flight fam? Welcome back to What the Flight Radio, a podcast for in-flight crew, frequent flyers, and anyone that gives a about aviation and travel. Happy Wednesday, you guys. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. Welcome aboard to episode 6. Or if you're new here, thanks so much for checking my show out. I really appreciate all of you supporting by listening and sharing. I hope you're all having an amazing week so far. I am gearing up for a very busy week coming up. I'm going back on the line as a line holder. And so I have some back-to-back trips. I have some pretty productive 4-day trips coming up back to back. And I'm trying to get ahead with my content, but I honestly feel like I am like one of those awful maintenance delays, the one that just keeps getting time added on again and again and again. And yeah, for real, that's like kind of how I feel right now. I just have so many ideas, but I feel like I have so little time, and it's just not even making sense to me because I had so much time off this last month. I was sitting reserve, but I personal dropped a lot of days. So if you don't know what that means, it's basically just like a PTO. But yeah, I took a lot of days off, but I had a lot going on. I feel like I was just adulting, you know what I mean? I had things that I had to do around my house. I was having company over. My sister's graduation party went great. We did have some rain, but for the most part, that went great. And I think she had an amazing time. And yeah, I was just busy getting my property ready for that. And I just feel like I can't keep up. And so anyone that has ever had one of those long maintenance delays knows what I mean. It just like keeps going and going and going. So that's kind of how I feel. I feel like I am recording so last minute this week, and I would love to catch up, but I just feel like I can't. But once again, I'm just doing my best, and I'm really hoping that my YouTube subscribers are checking this podcast out and seeing why I haven't really been producing so much content over there. Like my regular content, I used to do a video once a week over there, and I think it's been like a few weeks. I have so many ideas for YouTube. I just haven't had the time to actually like sit down and record them. But as you could tell, this podcast also has a lot of information in it. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to jam pack these episodes with information. And I'm hoping that you're all finding these really fun and educational. And I really hope that you're loving it. So speaking of my YouTube channel and this podcast, of course, I got to let you know that it's proudly brought to you in part by Living by the F Word. If you're an F-word lover, that means that you love flying, festivals, fashion, food, fitness, fine art, one of those F-words, or you live your life with a fulfill-it-yourself mentality. That means you're an F-word lover. So please consider being my friend. You can be my friend on my brand account, which is Living by the F-word, at Living by the F-word, or you could, of course, follow the podcast at WT Flight Radio. So you can definitely just add me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel that is separate from my brand account for the podcast. So go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're more of a visual person, I do put video up to, show me if you're interested in just watching me basically podcast. It's not too detailed, obviously, but some people do prefer to watch on YouTube, and especially once I get some guests on and have, Zoom actual meetings with these guests, it'll definitely probably be cooler to watch on YouTube. But yeah, if you are a visual person, definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. That will give you notifications of when I upload. And I feel like once I hit 100 subscribers on the YouTube channel, I'm going to do a giveaway. So spread the word. You know what to do. If you know any fellow travel addicts, any flight crew that would enjoy this podcast, you know what to do. Spread the word, let them know, and please have them sub on YouTube too. All right, so today's episode. This is going to be catered to my outdoor adventure seekers and my festival goers, of course. Anyone wanting to travel somewhere with their own camping gear. But if you're not sure how to take it on a plane with you, that's pretty much the key here. How to take your camping gear to a music festival when you're traveling by aircraft. We will dive into the details of all the types of camping gear and how to bring it on an airplane with you. But first, I want to give some Pride Month shout outs. And of course, I want to do our aviation lingo segment. So let's get into that right now. So first up for Pride in Aviation. This was something that I brought up last week. I wanted to actually do a whole episode dedicated to Pride in Aviation, since this episode is coming out on the last week and last day of June. And obviously right during Pride. So usually the whole month of June is celebrated as Pride Month, but typically the anniversary of when that happened, when the riots happened, was about over 50 years ago, I believe, right on this date or around this date. So I really want to do a whole episode dedicated to Pride in Aviation. But I didn't really get too much feedback in the aviation Facebook groups that I posted in order to do a full dedicated episode to Pride. So, I just felt like I didn't have enough to do a full episode. And I just felt like I wanted to do that because I feel like the aviation industry is a very Pride-friendly environment, and I wanted to showcase that, especially for Pride Month. But what I am going to do is, if there's anyone listening that has ideas on how to honor Pride in aviation each month, not just for the month of June, if you want me to do a segment, just feel free to DM me or email me, because it was kind of made clear to me, like seeing all the LGBTQ posts this year, that the LGBTQ community really wants Pride to be honored year round, not just for the month of June. They want it to be celebrated all the time by allies, not just in one month, especially when it comes to like a lot of the larger brands. They don't want it to just be like a marketing ploy. You know what I mean? So I totally agree with that, and I'm totally down to do that. So yeah, submit any Pride in Aviation ideas to radio@livingbythefword.com. Once again, my email is radio@livingbythefword.com. And that being said, I did get a few submissions from a very well-known Facebook group called Flight Attendant Career Connection. So thank you to the admin that approved my post, whatever admin approved my post, thank you. And for those that submitted within that group, I'm going to read those submissions right now. So first up, we have Kenya, and Kenya wrote, "This is right up my alley. My company," with 2 double A's in the company, "is supportive. I'm proud to be AA family." And she attached an article that tells her story by her airline, PSA Airlines, which is a subsidiary of American Airlines, better known as American Eagle. The article is a Pride Month Spotlight series where they state, "We are honored to feature our team members who are sharing their experiences. Prior to being a PSA flight attendant, Kenya was a mainline flight attendant, but she left to work in education, where she was one of 3 Black lead teachers and 2 lesbians in the elementary school. Unfortunately, diversity was simply not welcome there, and she hid from her colleagues that she was gay, knowing it would be difficult to fit in there." Kenya speaks out more of her life and her journey of finding freedom by being open about her sexuality, and credits the PSA leadership and Director of Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion for making her feel welcome and comfortable enough to reach out and share her story. Thank you so much, Kenya, for sharing this article with me. I'm going to leave the link to the article in the show notes for anyone that wants to read it themselves. But thank you so much, Kenya, and happy Pride to you. Up next, we also have written in by Cher. So Cher wrote, "So proud to be united, where you can bring your whole self," in caps locks, to work. She posted that United's recently updated their growing inclusion through our new appearance standards, and she posted a photo from the company. And so I actually did talk about this topic in last week's aviation news segment. So in episode 5, I did talk about this a little bit, but in case you missed it, United announced that starting in September, they would have new appearance standard guidelines, allowing visible tattoos. Men can wear nail polish. Men who wear makeup would be acceptable. It would also be acceptable if you have braids in your hair. So this is a massive step forward, and I elaborated it on a lot in aviation news. So I won't go too far into detail here, but this is just basically massive for the airline industry, because what United is doing is saying our employees are going to show up being their best if they're looking their best and truly being themselves. And the airline industry basically has always had very strict guidelines as to how your appearance is and how you look. So this is a huge step forward for aviation for sure. And Cher further wrote a quote about companies that states, "When the pace of change outside an organization exceeds the pace of change within the organization, then that organization is doomed to failure." So thanks so much, Cher, for sharing this policy change and for that quote. All right, we also had a write-in from Shoshana. I hope I'm saying your name right if you're listening. She is a Seattle-based flight attendant and travel lifestyle blogger, and she goes by @ShoshMeetsWorld on Instagram. And she's writing in from Alaska Airlines about their new Pride library that was unveiled, the We Fly with Pride plane. And I also mentioned this in aviation news last week as well, but it's a really beautiful library with the Pride flag on the engines with the Alaska colors swooping in front of it. And they have rainbow airplanes flying from the tail all the way up to the nose of the aircraft. And it's a really cool plane. So thanks so much for sharing, Shosh. And lastly, for me personally, while a very small gesture, I would love to see Pride in Aviation honored in the month of June by having a rainbow scarf or a rainbow tie to be worn and available to be worn by crew members. Please, that is what I want. I would love it if you're watching on YouTube. I'm like so happy right now. So yeah, similar to how Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is in October, you will see airlines will allow their employees to wear pink, and even the gate agents can wear pink, and the flight attendants and the pilots, they all wear pink to honor breast cancer and breast cancer survivors and the pink ribbon. So I would absolutely love to see a rainbow scarf or a rainbow tie that would be able to be worn for the month of June. That would personally be my way of wanting to show support to the LGBTQ community. And of course, many people know that the rainbow flag has been used as a symbol of gay pride for quite some time. But I'm curious, do you all know the history of that? Well, I decided to do some research, and this was some information that I got from an article written by Nora Gonzalez with Encyclopedia Britannica. I hope I said that right. Britannica? Sorry if I said that wrong. So the pride flag officially became the symbol of LGBTQ pride in 1994, but it had been designed by Gilbert Baker in the late 1970s as an 8-color striped flag. Each color has a meaning: hot pink for sex, red for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, turquoise for art, indigo for harmony, and violet for spirit. Due to production issues, the pink and turquoise stripes were removed and indigo was replaced by blue, which resulted in the 6-stripe flag you see today. So yeah, I thought that story was really cool. And I think it would just be an amazing way to show support for Pride in Aviation. I would just love to wear rainbow. I even have my Nomad Candy Rainbow Hearts necklace on right now. I just love rainbows. My entire blog is designed around rainbows. My entire YouTube channel is based off my blog's color scheme, which is all the colors of the rainbow. And yeah, my entire YouTube channel, Living by the F Word, I just love rainbow colors. All the festival outfits I wear are rainbow colors. So I am just so down to do that. And I just hope that that is going to happen next year. I think I'm going to write into my company about doing that. All right. So that's it. Now we are going to dive into our aviation lingo segment. And this is a segment I've been doing each episode for our listeners that are not in the aviation industry, or perhaps that are aspiring to be in the aviation industry and just want to, get up to speed with some of the lingo. And so for this week, or this week's word, it's actually like a combo of words that have to do with the type of pairing flight attendants and pilots have. And those words are 4-day, 3-day, 2-day, and 1-day. And lots of times the 1-day will commonly be referred to as a turn. And I wanted to talk about this because I've noticed in some of the other episodes, I've said the word turn before, or I've said 4-day turned into 5-day. And I feel like the more that I talk about the lifestyle of being a flight attendant, the more you might hear me say one of these things, because they're the type of trips we fly. I even said it at the beginning of this episode that I'm going to be flying back-to-back trips, and I have a 4-day and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's pretty self-explanatory. A 4-day trip, you will be away for 4 days. A 3-day trip, you'll be away for 3 days. A 2-day trip, you'll be away for 2 days. And a 1-day trip or a turn, you will usually return to base on the same day. So essentially, you will fly somewhere and then you're going to fly right back. And years ago, we even had 6-day trips at my company. And so it just really kind of depends the company that you work for and what type of flights and staffing they have in order to build the pairings. So there are also different variations of these types of trips that you might hear a flight attendant say as well. So for instance, they might say the word fake in front of a multi-day trip. So for example, you might hear a flight attendant say, "Oh, I'm about to fly a fake 4-day. Or do you want to trade my fake 4-day for your 3-day," or whatever. And so typically what that means is that if they say the word fake in front of it, the trip usually comes back to base just after midnight or before 8 a.m. the following day. So that's why they call it a fake 4-day, because you're not really gone the whole day on the 4th day. You're coming back time-wise in that 4th day, but you're not really working the whole day on the 4th day, if that makes sense. You're also gonna see something like a flight attendant say triangle turn, which is when instead of flying to one place and back, you fly somewhere, then you fly somewhere else, and then you fly back to base. So basically there's 3 flights, hence the term triangle. Now, everyone is different, and that is what makes this job so cool, because certain flight attendants prefer to fly different trips, and you figure that out, like the more that you fly and the more that you're with this career, you kind of figure out what you prefer. And so I typically like multi-day trips, like 3 days or 4 days. I really despise turns, actually. I really do not like turns. I just, for some reason, cannot get into them. But occasionally I will fly them because you can have what's called a high time turn. And that's a really good way to make a lot of hours in a short amount of time. But I usually don't like them just because you're just flying. There's no layover. You're stuck in the aircraft all day. Sometimes on the multi-day trips, you're stuck in the aircraft all day too, but then eventually you get a layover somewhere. So I just usually don't like the turns because there's no layover. But on the flip side, someone that has a family or needs to be home because they have kids, they usually love flying turns because there is no layover, and then they can go to work and then they could be home with their kids at night, or they can go and get their kids to school and then fly a late night turn and be back, by the time they're in bed or whatever. So, it just kind of depends on your flight preferences. And I think when talking about flight preferences in general, it's actually a really interesting topic when it comes to flight attendants, just because people like what they like. Some people prefer international flying over domestic flying. Others are vice versa. Some people really can't stand multi-day trips because you might fly a lot more flights, which means more passengers, which means more work, which means more everything. You know what I mean? And so it's just really situational. And my line for this month, and by the way, if you're unsure about what a line is or what a pairing is or any other term that I've said, it's probably because I've already mentioned them in another aviation lingo in an earlier episode. So you definitely have to go check out the other episodes, because I'm trying not to be so repetitive for some of my weekly listeners. But yeah, what I was saying was my line for this month is 4-day trips, and one of those days has a long 30 plus layover. So 30 plus hour layover, excuse me. So basically, to me, my trips this month are like a high time 3-day, because basically for 3 of those days, I'm flying a lot of hours, but then I have like 1 day off on a layover. And it's not really a day off because it's still what they call time away from base, but to me it's like a day off. So I don't know, I kind of like that, because it's like I'm just like back to back flying on the other 3 days, you know what I mean, with 1 day break in between. So everyone's different, you know what I mean? That's the best way I could explain it. Some people would hate 4 days, like they can't stand being away that long, But I hope that clarifies what types of trips flight attendants fly. It's wheels up time. Let's take flight into this episode. All right, we have reached our cruising altitude and we are ready to start today's episode. Before I give you some pointers about traveling with camping gear, I want you to know that I have talked about this topic before. And I have talked about a lot of various topics in regards to how to prepare for camping music festivals on my YouTube channel. So if you're more of a visual person and you're interested in what you need for camping music festivals, what food to bring, underrated items for camping festivals, harm reduction tips for festivals, I have it all over there, including a video/blog of me flying out to Electric Forest in 2019 with my camping gear. So definitely go subscribe to my YouTube channel over there. Check it out. My YouTube channel is Living by the F Word. Of course, after you listen to this podcast, because you may hear everything that you need to hear right here. So I wanted to give you some background with my experience with traveling with camping gear on an aircraft, because my camping setup has kind of evolved. I started very minimal, like super basic. I basically only flew with my tent when I first started. So I had my tent only in earlier years. And then in more recent years, I've flown out with pretty much what would be like my entire car camping setup, pretty much except for an easy up canopy and a cooler. So for any of my listeners tuning in that are not festival goers, but you're just curious in general, maybe you want to camp at a national park, or maybe you want to fly with your own camping gear, wherever it may be, whatever it may be, just know that at a national park, it would probably be similar to what a walk-in camping festival would be like. So what that means is walk-in camping festivals are basically on a property where you park your car or take a shuttle service at one location and then have to walk or carry your gear in. Whereas a car camping festival, you park your vehicle right next to where you're parking and camping. So basically you drive in and then you camp right next to your car. So that makes it extremely easy to bring so much stuff with you, and it makes your experience totally amazing, of course, because you could bring so many things with you. Nowadays, there's also many places that have pre-set up campsites. So what that means is basically you could fly in somewhere to a festival or even a campground, and they'll have like a pre-set up tent for you that you could rent. And that could sometimes work for people. And it does work for a lot of people, but I kind of have like felt like basically I prefer to rely on myself and have things that I'm used to or I picked out or that I'm comfortable with. And that's just like me. That's just a personal preference. But lots of times with the pre-set up tents, they're kind of on the smaller side. And while they're convenient, and it's convenient not to fly with your own personal tent, I do find that these pre-set up tents are just not that comfortable. And plus, I've already invested in camping gear for when I do drive to a festival, so I'd rather just bring my own. And if you're interested in learning more about different types of festivals with examples, I do have an entire video on my YouTube channel that talks about types of festivals explained and gives examples of each types of festival. And I also was a guest on Emma Capotis's Rave Culture Cast episode 101, talking about that same topic as well. So if you prefer to listen, basically we had a whole conversation about types of festivals. And there's a lot of information out there if you're just curious about festivals in general. There's a lot of information I have on my channel and on guest podcasts and things like that. So I'll leave those in the show notes for you if you're interested in looking at those. But that being said, my knowledge on this topic has grown like immensely from the first festival I camped at up until now, because I've just been doing this for so long. I've just learned so many hacks over the years. So let's just start with where I camped first. The first camping festival I ever went to was in 2013. It was in Belgium at Tomorrowland. If you're an electronic dance music lover, then you know what TML is all about. It's one of the largest dance music festivals in the world, and I would say it has the most countries in attendance. It's one of those global festivals that's really awesome. Like when I think about global festivals, like with a variety of different countries in attendance, I think of Tomorrowland, I think of Ultra Music Festival, Envision Festival even. I feel like they're pretty global as far as having different countries in attendance. But I do think that at one point, when was it? At one point, Tomorrowland said that there was more countries in attendance there than at the Summer Olympics, which is so crazy to think about. It was like over 200 different countries in attendance at Tomorrowland. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. This is why it's so important that I outline these podcasts to you guys, because I will just talk and talk and talk and talk, and I've already been talking forever. But yeah, basically that was the first place I ever camped at. And for this particular trip, I was pretty minimal because I borrowed a tent from a family friend, and it was so compact that I could fit it in my backpacker's backpack on my back. And that was essential because this is a walk-in camping festival where you have to carry your gear in. So less is more for those types of events. So Envision Festival is another festival that's walk-in camping, but that I've attended. But yeah, less is definitely more for those types of events. But from Tomorrowland, I even went and camped at Ibiza in San Antonio. And then after that, I stayed in a hostel on the other side near Ibiza town. It's so funny. I said Ibiza and then I said Ibiza town. I feel like sometimes I want to say it the American way and other times I want to say it the proper way. So that's really funny that I just did that. It's like I'm like switching off like in my head. But yeah, the proper way to call it is Ibiza, but a lot of Americans call it Ibiza. Anyways, I've actually camped several times in separate different years and in separate parts of the island in Ibiza. And it's a really good way to save money if you are solo traveling there. And especially if you're younger, it's very budget friendly. And it's just a really easy way to save money while experiencing Ibiza. So I'm not sure if I'd do it anymore now that I'm 34, but it was definitely doable for any of my younger listeners out there. In fact, camping anywhere is always a resourceful way to experience places anywhere. And if you're going to camping music festivals and you enjoy camping music festivals, then camping in general is just something you might want to look into as far as experiencing other countries or even other states within the United States. It's just very budget friendly, of course, and especially if you have your own gear. and you know how to fly there with it, which is what we're going to learn today. So getting back on track, I went to Tomorrowland, then I went to Ibiza, and then I was going to a lot of other non-car camping festivals, or I was going to a lot of non-camping festivals at all. Like I was going to a lot of city festivals, or I was doing destination festivals like Groove Cruise, places where you didn't need camping gear. And I was doing Mysteryland in the United States. That was a walk-in camping festival. So it really wasn't until Electric Forest in 2014, which is one of my all-time favorite festivals. I just love the forest so much. And actually, anyone that's watching on YouTube, the scarf I'm wearing, it has elephants on it. It's hard to see, but it reminds me so much of Electric Forest, which is why I'm wearing it, because this past weekend would have been Electric Forest, but it's now been postponed for 2 years in a row because of the pandemic. It's just so insane. I just can't even believe it. But it wasn't until I went to Electric Forest in 2014 that I really experienced a car camping festival. And I kind of experienced what the group I was going with, I just like realized all the comfort that they had. It was just insane. Like the comfort in their entire setup was so insane. And meanwhile, I still had the bare minimum. I was just in my tiny 2-person tent and sleeping on the ground. And it would get so hot in there that I would have to crawl out in the morning and just basically sleep in a chair, on the campsite. You know what I mean? So I actually continued to do that and camp like that throughout 2015 and 2016 for the most part, even for my first Burning Man in 2016 and even the second one in 2017. It was bare minimum stuff. And I think that was just because during those years, that was just what was within my budget. And I was young enough to tough it out and just be happy that I was experiencing these beautiful places and amazing festivals. And so finally, I reached a point in 2017 where I flew out to Electric Forest and I was sharing a tent with a friend that lived local to where the festival is located in Michigan. And he ended up getting kicked out of the festival grounds for reasons I will not mention here, but I basically was left tentless and all my stuff, I had nowhere to put my stuff because like they made him leave with his tent and I was sharing a tent with him. So I basically slept on an air mattress under an easy up canopy. And it was after that experience combined with sleeping on the rock hard playa at Burning Man for the second year in a row, where in 2018, I finally was like, okay, listen, clearly I love festivaling. This is a passion of mine. Clearly I like to do this because now I've been doing it for several years. Let me invest in some good upgrades, like a large tent I could sleep in, but also stand up in to get changed. And you guys know what it's like to be in one of those tiny ass tents where you're trying to put a onesie on or a one piece on or pants, even spandex pants, and you're laying on the ground shimmying, trying to, get your pants on. It's a pain in the ass. So to have a tent where you could fully stand up and get dressed up in is like such an elevated experience. I just can't even tell you. And so anyways, I was like, you know what, like, I just need to invest in that. I need to invest in a larger living space. I need to get a queen size air mattress so I could sleep better at night. Just let me do it up. Let me get all this stuff. But with that upgrade came figuring out how to fly out to festivals, because at this point, a lot of the people that I used to attend festivals with, they were kind of scattered in all different directions. And I was finding myself going to festivals alone or with other people that didn't have the camping gear like I did. And also at this point, basically, if you think about it, that transition point where I decided to get all this gear, I had become a flight attendant. And so I obviously had free flight benefits. So why would I want to drive 15 to 20 hours or more to festivals when I could just fly for free? You know what I mean? So that's when I started figuring this all out. So I'm going to go over my suggestions, what has worked for me. But obviously, it's so important to note that because I do work for the airline industry, that comes with a lot of perks. So I do get 2 free checked luggage or 2 larger items, and I can go over the weight limit. So like that's like a really big deal, just because I want to make that clear, because people that are tuning in that don't work for the airline, you know, you might have to finagle these things a little bit differently, but these tips will still work for you. And I still do have tips towards the end as to how to save money for checked baggage and stuff like that. So I definitely got you covered. Don't worry. But let's get into this right now about how you can go about flying to a festival. So for number one, and I only have like 5 major points here, but number one is wherever you're going. It doesn't matter if it's a festival, a national park, a campsite on campgrounds, you know, within the United States or within another country. You need to dive deep into their frequently asked questions page and their website and do what I like to call know before you go. Okay. So you got to know before you go. Even if you have been there before, things change. If you haven't been there in a couple of years, things change. Just know what their rules and regulations of their park is. So that way you don't show up with something that's oversized or something that is not allowed on the campground that you're going to have to discard. Things like that. Just very simple. Just do yourself a favor and go and read up on their frequently asked questions page so you are prepared and you don't lose out on any money by bringing things that you're not supposed to have, that type of thing. Number 2, you need a checklist. Okay, you need a checklist to pack. And I have basically created a whole separate YouTube video on how to camp at music festivals and a checklist with a downloadable link. So I will leave the link to my downloadable checklist for camping music festivals in the show notes that you can reference to use and pack every time you go to a festival. Now, I want you to understand that this checklist is going to have to be altered because you're going to be flying. So this checklist basically has been designed for maximum comfort, as if you were driving to a festival. And obviously you'll have to try to figure out what you can really go with when you're flying. Certain things are going to be not an option when flying. For instance, bringing an easy up canopy or shade structure. I usually always coordinate with other people I know I'm going to be meeting at the festival that might be driving in to bring things like that I could share with them. Same thing with a cooler. Like if I'm meeting up with people, hey, do you have some space in your cooler for me to put some beers? Something like that, because you simply just cannot bring it all with you on the aircraft. And you kind of have to also just kind of budget in that you might be buying extra food from food vendors because you're not going to be able to go and get a lot of food that you would typically keep in a cooler. Things like that. Just like you want to kind of always have that in the back of your head when you're doing these types of festivals, especially when you're flying to one of these festivals is what I meant to say. All right. So number 3, your tent. This is what you have to fly with. Okay. This is the part that like we're all really here for, right? How do you bring your tent on the plane? How do you bring your camping supplies on the plane? All that. So number 3, I have tent because obviously you need somewhere to sleep, and your tent is like the most important thing to bring, especially if you don't have one of those pre-set up things. And if you're wanting to fly with your own gear, which I think is the best way to do it, then you need your tent. So depending on where you're going is really going to depend on what type of tent you want to bring with you. And so I have 2 different tents. I have a small carry-on tent, which is the tent that I used during basically all the stories I told you in the beginning of the episode of going in a really small tent. I have that smaller tent that can be carried on the plane. I also have had in the past tents that fit in my backpacker's backpack. So this is something you might want to invest in if you plan on hitting up a lot of festivals. Say you're like, I want to go to Europe and hit up all these different festivals. I want to do it. You might have to invest in getting a tent that fits in your backpack or straps onto your backpack that's lightweight that you can bring with you to all these festivals to make your life easier. You know what I mean? But what if you want a larger tent? So yes, I do bring my larger tent with me. I have flown with it. And how I do that is I check it in a cardboard box for added protection. Now, hopefully if you're planning on investing in a larger tent, then the box it comes in, that it's shipped in, try to keep that. I used that box for a very long time, and then I would repack my tent and I would pack it back into that cardboard box. But it kind of got beat up, like all the festivals I was flying out to and reapplying the tape and ripping off the tape. It kind of got beat up. And then luckily, I don't know how, but my mom spotted this box at work and she was like, I see this box at my work that they're throwing out and it looks like it would fit your tent. And she brought it home for me and it fit my tent. So it was so awesome because now I have a new box for my tent for when I fly again. But you don't have to check it in a cardboard box. Like obviously you can just check it in the bag that your tent comes in. But the cardboard box, I feel like it's just going to give it added protection in case like something gets dropped on it, or in case it gets dropped, it's not going to bend your tent stakes. So that's why I like to stress the fact that I check it in a cardboard box for added protection. But you obviously can just check it just like how you would check golf clubs or check a snowboard or check any larger item if you're traveling somewhere. You know what I mean? You could just check it in a bag. It doesn't have to be in a cardboard box. That's just the way I prefer to do it. And yeah, that's what I do if I'm heading to a festival within the United States. So I've brought my larger tent, which is 10 by 12 tent. That's 10 feet by 12 feet. And I've brought it several times to Electric Forest. I've brought it to Desert Hearts in California, Burning Man. No problem. Has always gotten there and been safe in the cardboard box. So that's how I bring my tent. It's my first checked item. Okay, so now for point number 4, I have the camping supplies. I think this is where most people kind of feel lost as far as how to fly to a festival, because especially if you're used to car camping festivals, you could be really spoiled at car camping festivals because you could literally bring so much shit, like ridiculous shit, like slip and slides and bubbles and, you know, huge tables and huge speakers and DJ decks, and you literally can bring everything with you in a car, because if you're driving there you could just pile it all in and figure it out and like have like the most legit setup. Like I know that hands down I learned how to camp proper from my Forest fam, the people I used to go to Electric Forest with back in the day, in the earlier days of Electric Forest. I mean, we had fuzzy rugs, we had big cubes, LED cubes, we had blow up chairs, we had all the stuff. Like it was just so sick, such a sick setup. And to this day, I credit them because I still bring a lot of really cool stuff with me while I fly. And so here is how I do my camping supplies. I also check them in a large cardboard box. Okay. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to check the airline dimension guidelines that you're flying with. That way you're not charged a fee for some oversized luggage or whatever fees they're going to try to pull on you. But usually they can't exceed 62 inches, which is 5 feet 2 inches, length, width, and height added together. And they can't exceed 50 pounds. So typically the box with my camping gear is what I have as my second checked item. So this will be things for my campsite, like my solar lights, my camping light that hangs from my tent in the inside of my tent. I still do bring an inflatable chair with me. Believe it or not, I keep it in the original box and I pack it in this camping box. I bring my tapestries, which can be used as shade structure instead of an easy up canopy. I also have what's it called? I forget what it's called, but I also have this other type of shade, like it's like a deflective sun shelter that I use at Burning Man. I can't think of what it's called, but I bring that. I bring like bulky items like a blanket, stakes for my tent, hammer, magic mirror, ashtrays, rebarb. I've flown out with rebarb, my bike bells for Burning Man, like all my Burning Man gear I've put in a box before too. And yeah, it just basically anything that is pretty much necessary to have, or that you feel is necessary to have, that you can fit in a smaller box. I've even brought my little portable chargers and generators in this box. And my tip for that is, if you can, try to keep these items in the original box they came in. So my example for that is basically everything that I just mentioned, I keep in the original box. That way it's just boxes within a bigger box. So everything's organized. I know where everything is. Nothing's going to get crushed or damaged because it all has a home in its original box, if that makes sense. All right. So now we know how we're going to camp, or how we're going to check our tent and our camping supplies, right? So now you got to move on to what you're going to carry on with you, which is all free of charge, of course. You basically want to have your clothes in carry-on luggage, the carry-on luggage with the wheels, or a backpacker's backpack, whatever you feel most fit for the type of festival you're going to. My suggestion is, if you do want to bring a festival hat or a headpiece, anyone that has subscribed to my YouTube channel knows I am addicted to headpieces. I'm addicted to hats. I have so many, and I usually bring so many with me. But if you have a larger piece, wear it. Okay, so you want to wear it on your head, so that way that is like part of your outfit and it's not going to get crushed. The air mattress. Now, this is a huge thing. So I usually carry on the air mattress as like my quote unquote personal item. This is something you're going to want to think about, because you might have to sub out an air mattress for a sleeping pad that is more compact if you actually want to bring it on as a personal item, or if you want an actual backpack with a computer and all that type of technology stuff as your personal item with all your valuables. You might have to sub out the air mattress. Now, last week's episode 5, I did talk about personal item carry-on essentials. I went over everything that you should have with you in your personal item and some tips for packing luggage as well. So definitely go check that episode out. But this will all really kind of depend on if you're going to go solo or if you're with someone else. So if you're traveling with someone else, you guys can kind of finagle how to do all this. And so, for instance, one of you guys can check the tent and the camping supplies. Then you both can pack all your clothes in one larger suitcase, and then the other person will check that as their item. And they could also check an Easy Up canopy if you have it in a box. So you actually could bring a canopy if you wanted to, if you were traveling or flying with more than one person. And yeah, this is just really situational, but I'm going off personal experience of solo experience here. And so I also, like I said, just have a little bit of leeway. And I feel like I've gotten to bring a lot more since I'm an airline employee wearing a badge. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like I kind of get away with a little bit more. So I just want you to be resourceful, just because I'd hate for you to show up to the airport having too much stuff and getting slapped with a lot of bag fees, or, oh, you have too many carry-on items. You know what I mean? I just really want you to be mindful of that. I do think it would be easier if you were traveling with someone else. Okay, so let's talk about the fees that some of you might be dealing with and ways to get around the check bag fees. So, like I said, since I work for the airlines, I have that perk of having free checked luggage. But what about you guys that don't have that advantage? So I did talk about this on my YouTube video a little bit, but the check bag fees for most of the major mainline airlines, which would be in the United States, that would be Delta, American Airlines, and United. Basically, on average, it's $30 for your first checked bag. Your second check bag will be around $30 to $40. So you're always going to want to check who you're flying with. Basically, what airline you're flying with, what their rules are, because they're subject to change, of course. They're always subject to change. And yeah, basically, there's going to be a fee for your checked bag. With the exception of Southwest Airlines, they do allow 2 free checked bags. So it just depends on who you fly with. There may be a charge, but there might not be if you're flying one of the mainline airlines and you want to avoid the bag fees. You basically, what you want to do is build a relationship with that airline. So if you fly a specific airline a lot, right, and you basically know that, this airline flies out of your home airport a lot, what you're going to want to do is be continuously flying with them, getting miles on their airline. You want to build airline miles with them, but you also want to sign up for one of their credit cards, which will allow you things, for instance, like lounge access, or free checked luggage is one of the big ones when you sign up with an airline's credit card. They also allow you to do priority boarding and all the different perks that you basically want to have while you're flying with festival gear is what you want an airline credit card for. But basically, like, you just want to get a credit card with one of these airlines that you know is flying to a lot of the destinations that you are flying to, or near a festival that you're flying to, or whatever, that's like your home base airline kind of. Or really, it doesn't even have to be your home base airline. Most of the mainline airlines fly to all of these, major city airports. It really depends on who you love flying with. Definitely pick an airline you love flying with, that you feel like gives the best service, that you think has the best amenities, that you think is going to have the best future of flying as far as their aircraft and destinations and stuff like that. So like, don't solely pick on who has a hub near you, but lots of times it's just easier because they have more flights out of a hub. You know what I mean? But anyways, yes, please. So, I'm like, keep losing my train of thought here, but you want to get a credit card with one of these airlines so that at least your first checked bag will be free. And then in a lot of instances, you will also get a second checked bag free, which puts you then in the same situation as Flight Crew. You get 2 free checked bags. So see, there's ways around this. Okay. So yeah, if you think about it, you would get your tent checked for free. You would get your campsite gear in a box checked for free. And then even if you had a third item, so let's just say your air mattress, say you can't carry it on, say you already have your carry-on luggage and personal item and you can't carry it on and you want to check your air mattress. Well, let's say that costs $40 to $50 to check. Okay, so overall for 3 checked items, you're going to pay $40. I think that's pretty good for getting all your gear there, don't you? Like, I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's pretty good, but maybe not for you. But there's also airline credit cards that will allow your friends on the same reservation as you get a first check bag free. So I do believe that the United Explorer card allows that, and the American Advantage Platinum Pro card allows 2 free checked luggage, at least according to my YouTube video. It does. I'm pulling this information from my YouTube video, which was released pre-COVID. So please always do your own research. Once again, this podcast is simply to just share with you some ideas to make flying to a festival more manageable and to encourage you that it's totally doable, because it is. You just might not have other things that you would like to have as car camping, like your fuzzy carpet or a lot of chairs or a coffee table, you know what I mean? But there's also a lot of information out on Reddit, of course, the Reddit forums that discuss this topic. There's some people that have said tips like this, and I just want to share this with you just because when I was researching what other people did, this is what I found. So it might be beneficial to you. But there was someone that wrote that they check their large cooler with stuff in it, but they tape up the cooler so that you have a cooler upon arrival with all your stuff in it. So instead of a box, they use the actual cooler. Pretty cool idea. I would be scared that the cooler would break or the lid would fly off and all my stuff would get lost. Like, that's just me. I personally am just like, I guess, too paranoid to put all my camping gear in a cooler, but it's definitely not a bad idea. I've never thought of that. So if you definitely want a cooler and you need your own cooler because you're not meeting anyone at the festival that you could share a cooler with, probably a really good idea to do that. Also, there were some other suggestions that people had, like checking your tent within an army-sized duffel military bag with all your clothes. I think my tent's too big for that personally, but might be completely doable depending on the type of tent you have. And I kind of also just wanted to touch a little bit upon Burning Man, just because I know that I have some listeners out there that are probably curious as far as flying things out to Burning Man and things like that. But most camps have storage out in Gerlach, which is the town that is pretty much right before you get to Black Rock City or the Black Rock Desert where Burning Man is. And pretty much within that surrounding area of Gerlach, there is a lot of storage units that a lot of the camps will rent out. So if you're ever wondering how people got their stuff out there yearly, it's because they keep it in storage. They keep their bikes in storage, their major infrastructure, their furniture, their monkey huts, basically bikes. I think I said bikes already, but yeah, like a lot of the bigger items and things that they can't take home with them, they pay for a storage unit out there. And also some of the larger sound camps, they'll hire 18-wheelers and trucks to drive in, and a lot of people will load up RVs with trailers on the back and kind of just drive out. So lots of times if you're bringing a lot of stuff to Burning Man, driving is like really the only option. But for me personally, I have flown my camping gear out there, and I've flown out to every burn I've gone to since 2016 with my gear in a box, like I just told you. And so, yeah, I basically check my tent and I do everything that I just said above for Burning Man as well. And the good thing about Burning Man is that it really is a communal effort, which is one of the 10 principles. And so it really works out, you know, because you have to be a team, and there's a lot of teamwork when it comes to Burning Man. And so it's just a little bit more doable, I feel like, when you finally establish a camp and people are all contributing to participate in different ways. But I actually do have a lot of footage that I recorded packing, going to Burning Man, flying when going to Burning Man, that I never put out on my YouTube channel. But I feel like I will put that out there once I finally start talking about Burning Man on my YouTube channel again. I've been waiting to talk about it. I know a lot of people want me to talk about it, but I just have been waiting for Burning Man to happen again, because I'm like, are people actually searching about how to do Burning Man? I don't really know. I think since it's not happening, probably not. So that's why I keep putting it off and doing other stuff. But anyways, there's some other important tips that I wanted to kind of go over with you as far as flying to festivals, which it's kind of more like the know before you go phase. But you need to figure out your ride share. So if you're going to be flying to a festival and you're doing like a ride share, you have to, or like your friends are picking you up or something, you have to fly where it's most convenient for the people that are driving you in to pick you up. Okay. So for like, just to give you an example, basically you might end up like flying somewhere that you're still going to end up driving like 3 or 4 hours with these people, but at least you're not driving a full like 20 hours. You know what I mean? So yeah, for example, I flew to Chicago to drive to Electric Forest in 2019 with my friends. And I wanted to bring this up because the only disadvantage of this was that they were in Good Life and I was staff that year. So I figured, well, I have a staff band. Someone will give me a ride from Good Life to general admission where I was working for staff that year. And I thought it would be easily doable, but it was actually nearly impossible. And I waited basically from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. to get over to general admission. It was absolutely insane. So this is just a tip that ride in with people that are camping in the same section as you. A ride there is great, and I really appreciate my friends Paul and Nicole who let me ride in with them. But I'm telling you, definitely try to ride in with people that are camping in the same section as you. Also for Burning Man, I've flown out to Reno, which was really easy. Got picked up in Reno, which is, you know, just a few hours from Burning Man. But I've also flown to Las Vegas because that was the easiest place for people from my camp to pick me up. They were going to be passing through Las Vegas, you know, and they could stop on the outskirts of Vegas and pick me up. So I've flown there and then drove the rest of the long trip with them there. So I mean, lots of times you have to just do what's convenient for your ride. So just be mindful of that when you're packing too, because you don't want to have too much stuff. You want to make sure that they have room for you. You want to make sure you know what type of vehicle they're picking you up in, type of thing. Also for Desert Hearts, I've flown out to LA. I got a ride from there. So like, it's really easy to fly and get rides to festivals. I feel like, at least I have found a lot of people that have been helpful. But if you're doing a shuttle situation, yeah, sometimes you might need to basically drive after flying. Any type of rideshare, you might still be driving after flying. So just be mindful of that. It might just not be as easy as flying there, you know? And yeah, less is more, like I said. So get creative, team up with people at the campsite that you know that you're going to be meeting up with. Let them bring stuff out there for you that they're able to drive out with and take stuff back for you. And that leads me to kind of my closing remarks with this topic, which I've mentioned before. I know I've mentioned this before, but if you decide to fly to a festival, please do it responsibly. And what I mean by that is packing it in and packing it out. So too often people decide, I'm going to fly to a festival. It'll just be so much easier. I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to go to Walmart, buy my tent, buy my Easy Up canopy out there, buy my cooler. Oh, and then, yeah, I got to fly back, but I can't fly back with all this stuff. So I'm going to ditch it on the festival grounds. No, like, please, I cannot even tell you how much this grinds my gears and gets me heated. Please do not be lazy. Please do not create more waste. Please do not make it harder for festivals to come back to that location. You are part of the problem if you are ditching your camping gear at a festival. Period. That is what makes smaller communities not want to have festivals in their area, is if you are ditching camp gear and a lot of trash in their communities on the side of the roads, even at the festival, just leaving it there for the cleanup crews. It is such a problem. I think it's like a really big problem in European festivals, actually, like really, really big. Trash is like major, and ditching camps and tents is absolutely major problem in Europe as well. But yeah, you'll see this at a lot of festivals nowadays. And the reality is, you can fly to a festival with your gear relatively cheaply. So just don't be lazy. You could always send things to a hotel one way. Make sure you check with the hotel. So say you're flying out there, you're going to stay in a hotel the night before the festival starts. Have your stuff shipped to that hotel free of charge if the hotel allows it. And then you only have to worry about paying for getting your stuff back on the plane on the way back. That's also kind of like a little hack to save you money. But yeah, please do not ditch any of your gear. It's just so lazy and looks bad for festival culture and the festival community. I think you get my point with that one. All right. I hope I didn't miss anything. As always, you could always check out my YouTube videos on this subject. Also, I know that my girl, Where's Amanda? She's a festival blogger that I've met and had the pleasure of working with before at festivals. She has a lot of information out there because she has traveled to so many festivals overseas herself. And we've both done Electric Forest and Envision Festival and stuff like that. But I know that she did a guest blog post on Freedom Ravewear's site. So that's a festival fashion company in the United States. On their blog, she wrote about this topic as well. So there's just so much information out there. So feel free to reach out to anyone. Of course, feel free to reach out to me. You can DM me on Instagram at Living by the F Word, or even at WT Flight Radio. Of course, either one works. You can email me at radio@livingbythefword.com. If you have any questions, I'm always happy to help you out with this topic. Really anything that has to do with festivals, I am always wanting to help people. So yeah, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back with aviation news. All right, I am back for this week's aviation news segment. Up first, I have Alaska Airlines announced partnership with Boxed Water. So Boxed Water was kind of getting popular at festivals as well. And it's basically a company that has water in a kind of like a milk carton box. So instead of plastic, it is paper and completely better for the environment. So kind of a really cool partnership Alaska is doing there. Wanted to mention that as far as sustainability with airlines. All right, up next I have United Airlines places the largest aircraft order for multiple narrow body aircraft, including the Boeing 737 MAX 8 and 10, and also the Airbus A321 Neo. So with that, they have announced that all their mainline flights will have in-flight entertainment screens by 2026 or 2025, I believe. I have 2025 here, but for some reason, I feel like when I was reading the article, I think I was reading it on the Points Guy, that it was 2026, but whatever. Basically, within a few years, they're going to have Bluetooth technology for connecting headphones to the screens. They're going to have more premium seats. Every seat is going to have an outlet, and the aircrafts will have upgraded to the fastest available in-flight Wi-Fi. Now, I find this so interesting because the Bluetooth with the video systems on the aircraft is something I've been thinking about for so long. If you listen to last week's episode about what to bring in your carry-on personal item, I mentioned bringing wireless headphones for your personal device, but also wired headphones for the in-flight device entertainment on the aircraft. Like if there's a screen, you can't connect via Bluetooth yet. There's no technology for that. And now United just announced this. So really interesting to me. And also I find it very interesting because a lot of the European airlines were doing, and not just European airlines, but even Australian airlines were doing personal device entertainment where you bring your own iPad, you bring your own phone, and you can put it up in the seat in front of you and stream from there. Or they were renting iPads out to people. They were doing a lot of like personal device stuff. And I think the United States was starting to catch on to that and bring that onto their aircraft too, to the point where they were getting rid of screens in the back of the seats. And United was one of those airlines that was doing that, I believe. So now it's just interesting how it's totally changed, and they're going to be installing seat back monitors into all of them. I think that's just because people have found, well, the airlines, I guess, have found that people don't always bring their own devices, and then they expect entertainment because it's 2021, you know what I mean? So it's just really interesting how things are always evolving in this industry, and I wanted to bring that up. And speaking of interior updates, I also saw that KLM had announced that they are doing interior updates on their 737-800 aircraft, including having USB ports, cup holders, new business class and economy comfort seats, and larger overhead bin space. So I feel like a lot of these companies are just gearing up for travel to come back with a boom. Like it's going to be absolutely insane. And I think that they're just ready for it. Like after this whole long hiatus of not being able to fly, right? Like everyone is ready. Now, what was interesting about this video was that the cup holder is like one of those cup holders that comes down, like not like it basically comes down like a tray table, but it's on the back of the seat. And so I saw them put the cup in, but in my head, all I kept imagining was the person in front of them reclining their seat and it's spilling everywhere. I don't know, like for some reason, a tray table, it moves because it's attached to the seat in front of it. The tray table, if you have your tray table down with a drink on it and the person reclines their seat, it moves with it. But for some reason, the way this was designed, it just like gave me nightmares of it spilling all over people. I don't know. You would have to go watch the video for yourself, especially if you're just tuning in and listening to this. Like it's obviously hard to see without a visual, but yeah. But anyways, a lot of these companies are really getting ready for customers to be back at travel. So it's really cool. All right. Up next, I have a really sad story. We have a JetBlue flight attendant, Elaine Sabino, is still one of hundreds that is missing after the Champlain Towers collapse in Surfside, Miami. So I wanted to bring this up because, first of all, you know, to any of Elaine's friends and the JetBlue family out there, you know, this is a tragedy. Apparently, she was a amazing flight attendant. Of course, a lot of people that are flight attendants are just amazing people, of course, but they really have been bragging about the type of service that she gave. And so she apparently was one of the residents in this condominium that collapsed. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because I do have listeners that are not from the United States. And so I just don't know if they knew about it. But basically, it's just this major tragedy that happened in Miami, in Surfside, which is basically, it's like North Beach. So you have South Beach, you have Miami Beach, you have North Beach, and then you have kind of like where Surfside is, which is North Miami. And this condominium collapsed overnight. And since it was overnight, many people were home and sleeping, and there's hundreds of people still not accounted for. And just looking at the pictures, it's pure devastation. I can't even believe it. Like, looking at the pictures, it is so insane. Like, it looks like someone bombed the building. Like, that's how it looks. And so I just wanted to bring this up because, regardless of who we work for, all flight attendants, we all, travel for work. We're all, putting our lives at risk each day. And I just think it's important to honor everyone, you know what I mean? And so I really hope that they find her, and I really hope they start finding more people. It's very sad that really I haven't heard any news of them finding anyone. I feel like each day passes, and they're still searching for people. And so I just really hope for any of the friends and family that had someone living there, I just really hope you're hanging in there. Just can't even imagine how devastating this tragedy is. Okay, up next I have EasyJet CEO speaks out on the easing of travel restrictions, urging the UK government to further ease restrictions on European travel, stating that the delay in reopening is not justified when you look at it from a medical data and scientific approach. So basically, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson pushed back England's next reopening phase from June 21st to July 19th due to the Alpha and Delta COVID variants of the COVID-19 virus. So that is what that article was pertaining to, saying you're opening up domestically. Like, why don't we look at things from a scientific standpoint here and start opening up for flights? All right. Up next, I have certain Australian territories are now resuming quarantine-free travel in South Australia, Tasmania, Victoria, and in the Australian Capital Territory, which is Canberra. I know because I've been there. But yeah, shout out to all my Aussie friends. I feel like they've been locked down for a long time. So that's good news. But while that's happening, Western Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, and the Northern Territory are still under review due to highly contagious Delta variant that started spreading in Sydney and several other Australian cities. So half the country is still on lockdown and half the country is not. So really interesting. It's just interesting to see different countries and their development with vaccines and opening and things like that. All right, up next I have Allegiant adds 4 new cities to their 23 route expansion, including Amarillo, Texas, Melbourne, Florida, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Washington, Dulles. So Allegiant is a budget-friendly airline in the United States, just in case no one knows who that is. All right, we had an emergency landing with American Airlines Flight 2775 from Charlotte to Seattle. They returned to Charlotte due to a possible mechanical issue. Flight attendants prepared the cabin for emergency landing, and passengers state while it was a traumatizing experience, they credit the flight crew's actions. So yeah, shout out to American Airlines, way to go. As mentioned in the last week's episode, June is National Safety Month. And so please remember what your flight crew is there to do primarily. It's for your safety. We're there for your safety, right? So good job, AA crew. All right. I also have here that the Delta Airlines Museum, the Delta Airlines Flight Museum, plans to reopen July 1st, which will be shortly after this podcast is released. So if you're interested in visiting the museum, they will operate under modified hours and face masks will still be required. And lastly, this one is for all my Jersey and New York City flyers. United expects to resume to its full pre-pandemic schedule flights out of Newark this fall. That's huge news because I was really thinking that flights were not really going to be at full capacity this quickly, and it seems like they are due to the vaccinations in the United States. So very happy to hear that news from United. And this is also basically coming because the FAA slot waiver period ends, meaning United must use or lose their slots. So they're going to use them, of course, right? So United has also estimated that the number of Newark departures on mainline aircraft is going to increase from 55% in 2019 to 70% in 2026. Oh, maybe that's where I saw the 2026 from before. But yes, so this is sourced from liveandletsfly.com, who's a frequent flyer on United and is constantly writing about United. So that's all I have for aviation news. I will be right back. Whew. All right, you guys, just when I think that I can't make any episodes any longer, I somehow managed to do that. I talk a lot, but I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I really hope you are enjoying tuning in and listening, and I hope that these are bringing, some value to your daily routine. If you're cleaning and listening, if you're driving and listening, if you're sitting on, standby at the airport and listening, whatever it may be, I really hope that you're learning something new. I hope that you're enjoying the show. And thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me when you reach out to me and tell me that you're tuning in. It really does mean so much to me that you're taking time out of your day to listen to my podcast. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see on upcoming shows, don't forget to reach out. If you have any feedback or criticism or anything, please reach out. Once again, I will leave all my socials in the show notes below, and I will see you in next week's episode. Bye.